UTSA football post-game wrap-up. JJ Perez, Inside Runner Sports. That's Greg Lucas, San Antonio Express News, coming to you virtually following UTSA's 23-20 win over Southern Miss. We're doing this Sunday, the day after. Greg, the Roadrunners kind of had to grind one out against a scrappy Southern Miss team yesterday, and they made just enough plays to come away with the win yesterday.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing taking away from this one is getting to 6 wins and how much that meant to them. We talked about it during the week, and I asked pretty much everybody we talked to, there's not the same requirement for bowl eligibility that there used to be. It's not 6 wins gets you to that plateau. It's everybody's bowl eligible, and we'll figure it out from there. But they still treated this game like it had those stakes. I mean, we saw Jeff Traylor get the Gatorade bath after the game, and we saw just the excitement on the sideline. And it was funny, even the announcers were a little bit taken aback at the reaction from UTSA. But getting to 6 wins is a big deal because it gives you a much better shot at a bowl than if you don't have 6 wins, obviously, the benchmarks aside. And then just what it means in terms of you almost guarantee a winning record. Like there's a chance they could lose next week and then make up against Rice and then lose a bowl game and finish 6-7 or something. But for the most part, you have a good chance of securing a winning record, which is way more than anybody would have thought for this team. That was 7-17 the last 2 years, if I have that right. So there's a lot of reasons to be excited about this benchmark, and we saw that they were very, very excited about it after the game, and the atmosphere seemed pretty special there.
Let's stay on this topic of bowl and eligibility. And there was a year where UTSA got to 6 wins and they weren't invited. Now this year's kind of different because maybe there's less bowls, and I think maybe Conference USA is having least amount of teams with a high amount of wins. So it may actually work in UTSA's favor that there may be more opportunity there. Do you think that's kind of fair?
Yeah, so I have to look into the bowl situation in general because I know that I'm pretty sure CUSA lost 2 of the bowls that they were slotted for just due to cancellations and things. But clearly the league is not as strong as it's been. You look at Marshall, Florida Atlantic, UAB, Louisiana Tech, maybe like these are the good teams, and that's about the list. And then UTSA is right in that mix or above some of those too, even potentially. So that's like 5 teams in CUSA that you would potentially even like ahead of UTSA. And so it seems like they'd have to be in pretty good position for a bowl berth when those things start to get handed out. But I don't know exactly what that means. I've seen them projected to the Frisco Bowl a decent amount. I forget what some of the other ones were, and it just depends what's still going to happen and who that could be matched up against. Seems like it's up in the air, and I've got to go through and get a tally this week and see how it might shake out because it looks like a very real possibility.
Yeah, I think UTSA ends up with the bowl berth this season. I've heard the Frisco Bowl actually had reached out to UTSA last week sometime, so we'll see how that goes. The other thing that this win does, it keeps UTSA in the hunt for that West Division, which is kind of weird because the schedule is unbalanced. You have an odd number of games that it's not fair or even across the board, but UTSA is up there.
And I really have this is another one this week I want to figure out is how is that going to get decided? Like UTSA is 4-2 and UAB is 2-1. They have the same winning percentage.
Right.
And UAB beat them, but they've played half as many games.
Right.
Like, I don't know if they go to 3-1, does that mean that they win because they have the best percentage?
Right.
That wouldn't really be great if UTSA ended up 5-2. That seems not fair. So I have no idea how that's going to shake out, and it'll be interesting to see. You would hope that the league chooses to make up some of these games where those situations are a little bit more in the balance, so to speak. I think like you would like to see UAB be able to play as many games as possible to figure that out. And you'd like to see UTSA get that game against Rice back to try to figure this out. So these are ways that potentially we could sort this problem out without having it just come down to, okay, what are the percentages or what's the system for solving this? But I don't know what the league's going to want to do, and it'll be interesting to try to reach out to them and see what they have in mind.
Right. It's just a murky situation. That's the word I use to describe it because we just don't know. So on this game, Greg, we had a big performance from Sincere McCormick, who was, I guess, gone 9 days. Is that what you kind of tallied up from the birth of his daughter?
So from this, it was the Monday after the Rice postponement. until the Tuesday after UTEP, which is a long time to be away. But he said he was still kind of doing some conditioning, and they had mentioned previously that he was still in the team meetings because a lot of that stuff is on Zoom. So there's ways for him to stay plugged in, and he was still doing the COVID testing protocol, which is good. I was it's sort of curious to see how that works with getting a player reintegrated when they're travel away from the team. I don't know if that's written in their protocols or not, but I wonder how they had to handle that. I think he sat out at least that Tuesday that he came back until they were able to get the test result. So very interesting situation, but he seemed like coming back that he was pretty fresh. I know there was times in the first half that he felt kind of stifled or that they weren't really getting the offense rolling, but the second half he broke through for that 69-yard touchdown, and then it was just all go from there. He was not like completely unstoppable. It took 30 carries or so to get to his 179 yards. So the average is good, but when you take out that 69-yarder, maybe not great. But he did what he had to do to keep the offense moving and came up with that conversion at the end to sort of seal the game when they ran out the final 4.5 minutes.
Yeah, so 173 yards on 32 carries with 2 touchdowns. Pretty special season by Sincere. I just put out I was looking at all of his stats per game, and he's been the workhorse for this offense, and the offense wasn't very consistent yesterday, and he really carried them, I think, Greg.
Yeah, no doubt. And we saw when we were sort of wondering how the split would work now that Brendan Brady's back in the mix. And it seemed like they still go to Sincere first and foremost. And you can't blame them for that. He's obviously been a super dominant player and is probably the most talented guy on the roster. So I like that in a game like this where it's tight that they chose to ride him and to go with him. And then Brendan provided a little bit of a changeup when needed. And they still had some quarterback run with Frank Harris. That last drive that they had where they ran out the clock, it looked like they had that third down play blown up in the backfield, that speed option play. And Frank kind of faked the pitch. Fake is like a generous word. I think he wanted to pitch it, but knew it would have been a fumble and then kept it. And somehow it turned into a first down play for them. So they have a lot of different options to run the ball, which is good because the passing game just wasn't there yesterday. What did you think about Frank Harris and the passing game?
I thought it was just very pedestrian after the way they had a really good game against UTEP. Some of that is Southern Miss, though. Southern Miss is really good on defense, and they didn't lay down yesterday, and I thought yesterday was going to be a trap game for the Roadrunners, and it wasn't. It was to an extent, I thought, at least in the first half, but they did what they did to get the win.
So the thing with Frank was that we saw against UTEP was that they hit those deep passes. He hit Zakari 35 yards downfield twice, and against FAU that hadn't been there, they were 0 for 6 on those throws, and I counted, or especially early in the game, the first couple of drives, they went 0 for 3 on those throws where he was trying to find guys deep down the field and it just wasn't connecting for one reason or the other. And so without that deep passing element that they were able to go to, we saw a lot of the stuff they've talked about all year where teams are able to load up the box and really try to take away the short passing game or the running game as well. And that's how Frank, I think, ended up with less than 100 yards. So probably something that they'll just continue to work on and see if they can get those deep passes to hit better. Because we've seen what it looks like when it works well, and that was against UTEP. So that's the formula that they can try to recreate. But it's not, you're not going to hit your deep throws every week. Those are just tough plays to connect on in general.
Let's talk about the defensive play a little bit. We saw some more missed tackles in this game. Southern Miss was able to move the ball a little in the air, but the rush defense was a little salty. They only gave up 75 yards. What were your takeaways about the defensive effort yesterday?
Yeah, I think, statistically, it was another good defensive game, I think, if you just look at the end result. But watching it, it just felt like they were not playing at their usual standard, especially in terms of tackling. Like you said, it was just like there were arm tackles that guys were able to run through. And I know on the 51-yard touchdown that Frank Gore Jr. caught, he ran through like 5 guys, and they didn't really even get a good hit on him. It's just not what we're used to seeing from the UTSA defense. And I know after the game, Coach Traylor was saying, well, they tried to play physically and they tried to bring the big hits, and then that led to maybe less wrapping up and less sound tackling. And I guess that's part of it, but it didn't really feel like there was a lot of huge hits being made either. It just didn't, I don't know, something just wasn't all there, but they did enough, I guess, at the line of scrimmage that there weren't a lot of huge plays breaking free for Southern Miss, especially in the ground game. They were just limiting all of these to 2 or 3 yards. And so over time they were able to get the stops that they needed. It was just that some of these plays, these passing plays, or some of the times where they got into open field and the tackles just weren't made, was pretty glaring compared to what we're used to seeing, especially because, it's important to remember that this is a game that UTSA was favored in by 8 or 9 or 10 points, and we're expected to have a much easier time than this. And I think that's probably one of the biggest reasons, maybe between that and the passing game not being there, that it didn't turn out to be as seamless as it was. Because even without the offense clicking, you look at that second half and they go up 23-10 or whatever it was at that time, and then Southern Miss is able to get back into the game, and a lot of that was because of the missed tackles that allowed them to narrow the gap.
This was game number 2 in which safeties coach Jess Lepp called the defensive plays. As defensive coordinator Ty Nix is on administrative leave. It seems like he may be coming back at some point. At least that's what he kind of referred to in a tweet he said after the game. Is that the feel you get?
I just enjoyed that he was tweeting in general. I was digging through his likes this week. It's like, oh, he retweeted the triangle of toughness. He must still be on good terms with everybody. So I really don't know exactly what the situation is there, but you have to imagine if he's still kind of plugged in. He tweeted hashtag Godspeed on my return. Presumably he's not out of here forever, and it's late in the year. So if he's even, projecting the possibility, that would have to be, this week or for a bowl game, because there's just not that much time left in the season. So it's dangerous to speculate on that because I really don't know all the circumstances there, but it does seem like he's still, plugged into the program and rooting for the guys at this point. So that's positive.
It's been 1 week since they announced his leave. Is it strange we haven't heard anything either, officially?
Yeah, I guess I mean, a lot of this stuff is going to be handled behind closed doors, whatever the reason is. There was certainly something they wanted to be kept private, and it's easy enough to just say, hey, nobody talk about this, and that's that. But in what we've been able to ask from the players and from coaches, it seems like they've done their best to make it business as usual. Like each week anyway, all the position coaches are helping with their scouting and game planning process, and so that just gets amplified a little bit. And each week anyway, everybody is involved in setting what kind of things they think will work and what kind of things they think won't. So what really changes is that Jess Lepp is the last guy to make the calls on the field. And it's really hard to say if there's a big difference or not, because who knows how the game plans differ week to week. Like, remember against UTEP, it was like, well, they were blitzing way less. And it's okay, is that Ty Nix, or is that how they match up against UTEP, that they think they should blitz way less, So it's very hard to say exactly what the impact is, but certainly the defense has not been a glaring weakness. If we're talking about the biggest issue is tackling, I don't know if the defensive coordinator and the play calls factor into that as much. So I think the guys were in the right positions, and the play calling seemed to be up to par to be able to do what they needed to do on that end.
So UTSA is set to close out their regular season this week. Currently scheduled regular season, closer this week. We don't know if the Rice game is going to be rescheduled or if there'll be another game to take that place. Greg, do you think the Roadrunners come away with 7 or even 8 wins this year?
I think that the North Texas team has looked beatable. I know the line usually comes out right around now. I haven't seen if it's out there yet, but North Texas seems like a winnable game just based on what they've done to this point in the year. And then if Rice gets rescheduled, I mean, I know that they were pretty strong against the same Southern Miss team. There's just not a lot out there on them at this point to say for sure what Rice brings to the table. So that could be a tough matchup. That one could go either way. And then it just depends on your bowl opponent. So certainly I would be surprised if they ended with 6 wins, just because obviously I think they're a favorite this week. So already the odds are on 7. And then it just comes down to these bowl matchups. Like if they're up against SMU or somebody like I've seen projected, then it could be a pretty tough bowl game for them. But if they do get the opportunity to play Rice, that would be a winnable game. Could go either way. And then it depends if that doesn't come together. Well, what if they try to find another non-conference game in there too to hold them over in December until bowl season starts? So it's really up in the air, but I think you're looking at a winning season. It would be shocking to see them finish 6-6 or less.
Is that surprising that UTSA has been able to will be able to put a winning campaign, and all things considered, Jeff Traylor's first year, limited preparation, the schedule being changed. I know some of that, maybe one of the games broke in favor of UTSA with the schedule, but they've come out and won some really close games that they could have lost. And
No, yeah, It's totally shocking. And I mean, I think I don't even know if I would agree with that. Like you picked up BYU, which is a very tough game as well. So as much as you lose LSU and you pick up BYU, those are both games that you're probably not going to win. So it comes out about even, in my opinion. Now getting Memphis out for Middle Tennessee, that's an upgrade, and that helps them fill out the conference schedule too. So, but point being, yeah, it's totally shocking in the big picture, right? Because we were talking all summer about first year staff coming in. That's a challenge to begin with because you have the recruiting component, right? So they get here in December, and then early signing day being what it is now, you have almost no time to get it together. They add like Jamal Ligon real late, and that becomes a huge impact player for them. And then it's what can we get together in February for the next signing day? And then suddenly we're talking about COVID situation, and there's no spring practice to install your system. Summer is all on Zoom, and it's like that trust that probably gets developed between teammates and a coaching staff to be able to work through a situation like that just can't exist in the same way because you haven't spent as much time around them. So for so many different reasons, it's harder for a first year staff to be in that situation, to have to teach and learn in that environment. And they put it all together and they come out on the field and have these results where the only games they've lost are against really tough opponents. So they've won every game that felt pretty attainable to them at this point, it feels like. And I think that has to be considered a complete shock and probably way above what everybody else would have thought in the big picture. It seems less like that now just because of how much time we've had to watch it grow and develop. Like over the course of the year, to see them get better week after week and do different things where they were competitive in some of these tough games and it carried over to wins against some more beatable teams. But yeah, in the big picture, it's a huge accomplishment for them, and they have a lot to be excited about. Especially, it's a good year to be doing well, right? Because everybody can come. It's especially important this season to have that kind of success to build off.
Well, I think that wraps it up, Greg. Or you got anything else? A little basketball this week, I think we're gonna get.
Yeah, I'm not ready. I mean, I guess like the calendar is all over the place just because of everything with COVID. So suddenly it's basketball season, and I shouldn't say suddenly because it's delayed, right? But it just feels like it just doesn't feel like it's here, and it's going to be really interesting to see. I guess probably because of the way the schedule came together, that we weren't even sure who they were playing until last week, and now here we are. It's almost game time, so it'll be interesting to see.
Yep. So stay tuned, keep posted. We'll keep you guys posted. UTSA basketball, UTSA football this week. Another home game, and we'll see how the chips land with the bowl invite if and when that comes. So, Greg, I appreciate you joining me on your day off. Thank you,
Hell
sir.
yeah. Take
And
it easy.
we'll
Bye,
talk to you
people.
during the week.